and I'm delighted to introduce our next presenters from Guidewire Software. So Gary Hartigan is a senior campus recruiter and Joanne Murray is a global early talent leader with Guidewire. And Gary and Joanne are going to take you through turning your placement experience into your future career skills. So we're so delighted to have you both here today, and we're also so glad to have Guidewire on board the WAM program now as well. I'm very excited to announce that we'll be advertising two roles. I believe Deirdre might pop some info on them in the chat, and I think Joanne's going to give a bit of info about that at the end of the presentation. So I'll just hand over to you, Gary and Joanne, if you'd like to share your slides.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let me share my screen. Just let me know there if you can see.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So a warm welcome today, and thank you
Sorry,
for
Gary, I
having.
might just come in. Oh yeah, you're on full view now. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah.
All
That's
good.
perfect. Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you. Thanks so much for having us today. So today we're going to talk through interview and CV top tips with Guidewire. So just in terms of who we are, I'll jump in first. So my name is Gary Hartigan. I'm a campus recruiter with Guidewire. I've been here just over 4 years, and I would be supporting the hiring of our interns and graduates to Guidewire. Joe, do you want to jump in there?
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here to do this workshop and build this partnership with Ahead. My name is Joanne Murray. I'm a senior manager in our talent attraction team. So my role involves leading the strategy and delivery of Guidewire talent pipeline programs globally. So that includes Guidewire Basecamp, which is our intern and graduate program. And I've been with Guidewire for 6.5 years. And yeah, really passionate about, early talent development, employee experience, building out programs like Guidewire Basecamp and, other diversity programs as well. Just to give you a little bit about Guidewire, I don't know if you're familiar with who we are or what we do. Guidewire Software provides core system softwares for the property and casualty insurance industry, so the P&C insurance industry. So we combine core digital analytics and AI to deliver our platform as a cloud service. So our products help insurance companies manage policies, claims, billing, and underwriting. And we work with very large insurance companies of all sizes all over the world. So some of our big customers would be the likes of Zurich, Liberty Mutual, but we're working with about 540 insurers across 40 different countries that all run on the Guidewire platform. So yeah, just a little bit about us, and yeah, super excited to be here today and to talk about interview techniques and top tips for your CV and preparing for interviews. So yeah, thanks, Gary. Over to you.
Thanks, Joe. So CV tips and tricks. I'm going to actually jump into a different document here. Can you just let me know? Can you see that okay?
I think it's still on the slides there for me anyway.
Give me a second. I'll share the document. Any better?
Yep, that's going up there now.
Thanks, Lambda. So in some cases, now that some of you have finished your placement, it's really important to have your CV up to date, really to reflect previous placement experience and showcase any sort of skills or experience that you've achieved to date. So this is all about putting your best foot forward. So to ensure your CV is up to date, we would work through this section chronologically. So really having your name and your personal details, including contact information, up to date. So this is important for us to be able to reach out to you. So having an email that works, having, again, your most recent or up-to-date telephone number there so that we can reach out to you. An introduction and a quick personal summary of your career. So again, 2 to 3 sentences, maybe something that you've learned in your course or where you're at just after your studies with your career. And then a career summary listing all your previous or relevant experience in chronological order. So that could be any sort of work experience that you've done. And again, any sort of any sort of experience you've gained throughout your studies. An academic summary is important really to have your courses listed. So any sort of courses that you've completed, any additional certifications that you've done, have all of those modules listed on your CV so that they're easy to read. And then a skills summary is important, and we will break this up into soft skills and technical skills. So an example would be technical. If you've done a certification in Java, you could have that listed, or Python or any sort of technical language. And then for soft skills, if you've worked on team projects, you've really developed those teamwork skills. So really having that showcased in your soft skills section. In addition to that, you can include any sort of hobbies, extracurricular activities, any sort of volunteer experience that you've done. This is always a really nice talking point as a recruiter would review your CV and talk to your experience. And then we talk about tailoring. So really being mindful, tailor your application. So this is about tailoring your application to the job that you're applying to. It's not about just getting your CV everywhere or blasting it everywhere. It's about being intentional, really reviewing the job spec at hand and really tailoring your experience and what you've learned to the role. So that's something to be mindful of just as you're going through that application process. And in terms of resources, so don't worry, we're going to share this document with you. So this will be there. We'll have chat. There's a link there to ChatGPT, LinkedIn Learning, or even Paddy Jobsman. These are all resources that you can use when you're thinking about writing your CV. So again, we'll share this document with the team to share out with you afterwards.
Gary, could I just add one thing there? So this document is 14 pages, so we only have a short slot today. But Gary, if you scroll up, like there's lots of different information, what we'll have in some of the slides around the interview technique. It also goes through LinkedIn. You know, if you're on LinkedIn, there's some best tips or some top tips for your LinkedIn, as well as the CV tips that Gary mentioned there. So yeah, it's a bit more of a deeper dive. It's a playbook, but we'll share it with everybody that's here today, and it might be useful for you after the call. You know, have a coffee and you know read through the playbook. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm going to jump back into our deck, if that's okay. Perfect. So let's switch gears now to the interview process, top tips and tricks. So if we think about the candidate journey, now your CV is submitted and shortlisted, what's next? So let's talk about the process and the stages. So before your interview, prepare for the unexpected always. So this is delays. Really plan your route to the office and leave enough time for potential delays. So this is really to avoid stress for yourself. So you don't want to arrive to the interview a few minutes late and you feel stressed. So it's really about putting your best foot forward here. Any special accommodations, let your recruiter know in advance if you require any special accommodations and they can talk to you. And then do your research the company thoroughly to ensure it's a good fit. So again, this could be research on where they're based, where's their HQ based, their product suite, or just a little bit of an overview about the company. What's the company's core values? So really do your research and show that you're interested in the position. And then again, you can go to their Instagram, you could go to their careers page. There's lots of different ways that you can really identify information about your potential employer. And then I like to think about preparation for questions. So really thinking as you're going to the interview, well, what questions do I have for them, or what can I ask the team? Really have that thought in your mind as you're making your way to your interview. And then during the interview, engagement. So bring your CV, bring a notebook. I'd usually take a few notes if needed, and really engage with everybody in the room. Say hello to everybody and really show you're attentive and excited to be there. And then this is really, really important, really being positive and listening actively. So really avoid that negative talk or speaking negatively about your previous employer. So I like to think about a challenging situation, for example, and then what you learned from that situation. Really think about how you're framing your answers and again, really reframing it in a positive way or a constructive and learning way. And then for me, nerves, even today, like have a glass of water beside you just to stay calm, stay prepared. It's totally okay to be nervous for an interview or a presentation. Um, and again, ask questions at the end, just to my previous point, as you're going into the interview, what questions do you have for about the organization? You know, what impression do you want to leave? And they're asking you questions and want to get to know about you, but you also want to get to know about them and ask them some questions too. And then after the interview, so really as we're finishing up and we're finishing up the stages, keep your professionalism cap on. Keep that there until you've left the client premise. So again, saying goodbye to the person at reception or just really leaving a good impression is important. So follow up with a thank you email then to your interviewer just to let them know, you know, your gratitude for being there. And then feedback is a gift, you know, always a gift, whether you got the job or not. Really request constructive feedback on how you got on and really understand what went well and then again what needs to be improved for future interviews. So I'm going to pass you over to Joe, and Joe will run through the STAR method technique.
Thanks, Gary. You can jump to the next slide there. So some of you on the call may be already familiar with the STAR interview technique, but you can't beat it. So we wanted to kind of go over it again today and just kind of walk through the structure. So the STAR technique is a structured method for answering behavioral-based questions by demonstrating your skills and your experiences. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So situation is all about describing the context or the challenge that you faced. Task is explaining, you know, what was your specific role or responsibilities in the situation. Action is detailing, you know, what steps did you take to address the situation. And then result is, you know, what was the outcome? What was the actions that you done, and what did you achieve, and what was the output of the situation? So if you flick to the next slide, Gary, we just here are some examples of behavioral based questions. You know, they're quite common that they can come up irrespective of what the role is or what the industry is on what company you're going for. You know, they tend to be all pretty similar. So as an example, you know, tell me about a time where you've made a mistake. You know, tell me how you handle pressure at work or school. Tell me about a time when you've went above and beyond. So they tend to be quite similar, you know, irrespective of role or, you know, or industry. If we move to the next slide, Gary. Yeah, so this is just an example here of, okay, can you give me an example of a time when you've handled a difficult customer? So the situation was at my previous job as a customer service representation, a customer was upset because their order was delayed for 2 weeks due to a shipping error. The task: it was my responsibility to calm the customer and find a solution that satisfied them while maintaining the company policy. What was the action? I listened actively to their concerns. I apologized for the inconvenience and checked with the logistics team. And I offered expedited shipping and a discount on their next order. The result: the customer appreciated the effort and left a positive review about my service and improving our customer's reputation. So that's a really simple example, right, of how we can apply that STAR methodology in how you answer your questions. As I said, there's lots of, you know, behavioral based questions that you can apply that, you know, that technique to. Gary, next slide. So here are some top tips on how you can prepare using the STAR method ahead of your next interview. So as Gary touched on earlier, it's really important to look at the job description and tailor your stories based on those job responsibilities. What are the most important skills and qualities in the job description? What examples do you have that can match what they are looking for? So prep those stories. Think about different, experiences that you had, overcoming a challenge, working in teams, and practice that storytelling. So structure your stories, practice it out loud, rehearse your answers, you know, mock interview with a friend or a family member, or just even, say it out loud to yourself in the mirror. But that storytelling piece is so important, because the more you prepare, that will help with your nerves, when you go into the interview, and you'll have your examples ready on what you want to share, relative to your experience. I think it's important to keep your answers concise, really focus on the action and the impact that you made. So typically maybe 2 minutes per answer, right? Just so you're keeping your answer succinct and concise as part of the interview process. But at the same time, don't rush yourself. Take your time. It's okay if you're struggling to answer a question. Most of the employers that you're meeting with or the interviews that you're doing, the interview team has gone through training. So if you're struggling to answer something, that's okay. They'll either rephrase it or they'll move on, to the next question. And, it's not a big deal. So don't panic and just take your time. Cool. Thanks, Gary. So we also wanted to share, some top tips. I know some of you may have done a placement recently, or maybe you're moving into your next placement. But I think it's so important to like stop and reflect on the experience you may have gained from your last placement and how that really is such a stepping stone, in your career. So, if let's say you didn't get a conversion opportunity, or maybe a full-time opportunity wasn't available in your last placement, that's okay. That happens. I think it's important to just, reflect, gather feedback, think about your own performance. Like, how did it go for you? Were there any learnings, as part of your placement? Did you feel that your accommodations were met during the placement? Was that a positive experience? I think it's so important to stay connected with that previous employer, maintain those relationships, seek out recommendations on LinkedIn. Sometimes, you may have joined a certain team and there might not be full-time opportunities available within that particular team. But there could be other teams or departments within the company that might have, opportunities available. So you never know. So I think, it's so important to sort of keep that network and maintain those relationships. And make sure that your CV and your LinkedIn is now updated with your new experience on your placement. So highlight your key projects, your skills, the problem solving, everything that you've gained from that, opportunity, and continue to upskill. If you're looking for work right now, continue to develop those skills, take free courses online, LinkedIn Learning, think about other placement opportunities. Gary touched on volunteering. There's lots of ways that you can continue to gain more experience, while you're continuing to look for other opportunities elsewhere. And I think be open about the accommodations if needed. So if you did face any challenges due to a lack of accommodations, reflect on what you might need in your next role opportunity. Um, Apply strategically. So think about, companies that are known for accessibility, inclusivity, organizations like Ahead here, leveraging that to connect you with employers and opportunities and support you through, through the process. And continue to stay positive, right? Job searching takes time. Be confident in your abilities and you know the placement experience that you've had, and you know just keep moving forward, you know, as part of that. So you know, even you know, for us with internship hiring, there's lots of times that you know we see great interns that had you know great experience, but we might not have all of the full-time recs available to convert everybody, but we still stay connected. And sometimes you have people coming back a year later, or 2 years later, or 3 years later. So you just don't know. So I think maintaining those relationships are really key. Um, we're super excited to pilot this relationship with WAM, and we've two placement opportunities coming up. They're coming from a software engineering background. So we're looking to hire a software engineering intern and a consultant developer intern. And the placement will start in June and it's for 6 months. And my understanding is it will go live on the website in, I think, about 2 weeks' time. So definitely stay tuned for that coming up. But you know, we've as I mentioned earlier, we've a solid program called Guidewire Bootcamp, where you know we'll bring you in, you'll have a solid orientation. You're going to be part of a community of about 94 interns globally that are in Guidewire. Lots of different events happening, mentorship, hands-on project experience. So yeah, we're super excited to have these opportunities and hopefully bring in more great talent, you know, to the program and yeah, so I think that's it for what we had today to share. I'd love to open it up if there's any questions, any Q&A. No question is a bad question. This is a safe place. Myself and Gary are super open. So yeah, would love to hear from anyone on the call.
Thank you both very much. That was fantastic. Some really useful practical guidance there, and the document as well. I think it'll be great for people just to have as like a basis, I suppose, for interview prep, CV, LinkedIn, everything. So we'll share that with everyone after the call. But yeah, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat. I think we've one in there. So what can make you stand out positively during an interview?
Gary, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, so what can make you stand out positively? I would say just enthusiasm, really being excited for the opportunity. So I always think smiling is good, and smiling, and it was to my slide earlier, just engaging, really engaging, and showing that engagement, showing that positive attitude, and of course smiling and being friendly. I think that really helps someone stand out for sure in an interview.
And just to add to that, I think doing your research is so important. Um, it's always tough when you get in front of a candidate and they don't know what you do as a company, or they haven't even, you know, looked on your website. They don't know your core values. So I think that's like the basic minimum. You know, look on the website, look on some of their social channels like LinkedIn, Instagram, get a feel for the culture. I think that really shows up positively when you've done that research and you have a bit of an understanding about what the company does and some of their core values. So yeah, and ask questions. You know, as Gary touched on there, typically at the end of an interview, you have like maybe 5 minutes or so, and that's where candidates will ask questions. Like interviewers will open it up. Have you any questions? Um, that's your time to leave a lasting impression where you can, you know, ask one or two questions to, you know, to the employer. Use that time. Don't just say, no, I've nothing. Come with, you know, one or two questions that you want to ask, because that can open up the dialogue and, you know, that can help you stand out as well as a candidate.
Great. Yeah, I completely agree. I think like even asking, like I know in previous interviews for myself, I'd kind of ask, you know, um, how do you find working in the organization? And you do get a good feel as well for, I suppose, obviously they're not going to maybe be as honest as they might be, but it's still good to kind of get a sense of someone who's been there for a while, kind of, you know, the vibe of it all and if they enjoy it. And I know Dear just said there, you know, that they hear from employers that meeting candidates that know a little bit about the company makes such a difference. I think even looking at like a little bit of like the latest news on that company makes such a difference, kind of knowing where they stand.
Yeah.
We do have
And
another question. Oh, sorry, John, you go on.
no, I was just going to say, Bambi, as well. You know, when you're asking those questions, I think Gary touched on it. It's your opportunity to find more about this, like the company and the role itself. And is this a match for you? Is this something that would excite you or motivate you? You know, sometimes, like, you know, if it was me, I would be asking about, okay, what does success look like in this role? What does the, you know, the first month entail? What, you know, what are the top things you're looking for? Or, as you know, Bambi touched on there, what do you like working about the company? Why do you stay with the company? That can give you good insights into, you know, the culture there, and also the team that you're joining, and the, you know, and the role. So just to add a couple of examples as well to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose on that note as well, there's another question on what questions have candidates asked you that have impressed you, I suppose, as an interviewer.
I think it's can I jump in there, Joe? Is that
Yeah.
okay? I think being intentional about doing research on the person interviewing you. So for me, it's being very granular and saying, oh well, before Guidewire you did X. What was that experience like? So really doing your research on the people who are interviewing you, that definitely leaves a lasting impression for me. Because again, to Joe's point, it shows you've done your research on the company as well as the people who you will be speaking with. So even again, if it's their role title, well, what's it like working in whatever position you're in? It shows that you've done the research on the person that you're speaking with.
Yeah, I think I shared some examples there. I think, what does success look like? What would the first, you know, 3 months look like for you? Why do you stay here? You know, what do you like working about the team or working in the company? Questions like that, I think, give good insight. You know, personally, in my experience.
Super. No, that's very helpful. We've got one more question in the chat there as well, just around what common mistakes should they avoid when writing their CV.
Gary, do you want to take that?
I would say common mistake. This is I would say dates is important. So, you know, as you're working through your experience, as I mentioned chronologically, it's important really to have dates and months. So what month did you start? What month did you finish? Again, that is the same for academics too. Like, when did you graduate? 2025 or 2024, but what month? Because it really showcases then, well, when you're available to start an internship. So I would say really having your dates accurate and chronological would be important for me on a CV. And then again, a nice flow following that structure that we're going to share from that document, you know, having a name, having your email address and phone number up to date so that if you are shortlisted, you are contactable as well. They'd be two of my big tips for sure. Joe, anything else there?
Yeah, just to add, so I think as recruiters, you know, we see thousands of CVs, and it's like, how do you get your CV to the top of the pile, right? I think, you know, a summary statement is key, because that's the first thing a recruiter will look at. You know, when we look, we're like, okay, what's the summary statement? Is this really fitting what we're looking for and the job profile and what we're looking for? So that 2 or 3 statements, you know, at the top of your CV is really, really key. It might be, you know, I have a degree in computer science, or I have 2 years industry experience in customer service, or, you know, whatever is relevant to you and your experience. Or maybe you don't have previous experience, and that's okay. It can be, you know, I'm a motivated individual, I'm hardworking. You know, it can be using words like that to describe your, you know, your attributes and your skills. I think that's really important. And then, as Gary mentioned, that chronicle order of, like, always have your, for me personally, is like your previous experience. So if you've done a placement recently, that is the most first thing on your CV. And I'm seeing the most up to date. What was the recent thing you've done? You know, what were some of the key things that came out of that? Okay, great. This, I'm already liking this CV. I'm going to read further. Because if we're not seeing that on like the first page, you've got so many CVs that you're coming, you know, that you're reviewing, you might say, oh, actually, this isn't the right fit. I'll move on to the next, the next application. So I think that, first page is so key in getting, the summary, your most recent experience, so that the recruiter wants to read through more and really get to know you as a profile. And if they like the CV, then they'll start clicking on your LinkedIn, looking at your LinkedIn. Oh, what's there? What's matching up for me here? Oh, they might have worked with this company. Great. So just I think that page one is super key. And then don't have it too long. You don't want a novel, like don't have it too long. I think 2 pages is enough, 3 absolute max. Anything beyond that is too extensive. But yeah, just some additional tips there.
Brilliant. That's super. We have another question there. So if graduates don't have a lot of paid work experience, do you have tips on what they can add to their CV or application to demonstrate the competencies they have for the role?
Yeah, great question, Deirdre. If they've done volunteering, if they've done any unpaid work, I think that's great to add in. If they've been involved in like community or sport or teams or, have any kind of hobbies that they're passionate about, I think that's, key. Maybe they've been in like a community role or, something in their community that shows leadership or shows how they've used, organization skills or relationship skills. It doesn't have to be necessarily paid work experience. It's just connecting it back to the job spec. If the job spec is looking for someone that has organization skills, maybe they've done something as part of a club that they can highlight or had a role as part of a club and put that on their CV. So it's just thinking about other ways to kind of capture that experience. But yeah, great question.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We have another question. Everyone's being very engaging today, so thank you for the questions. What is Guidewire's procedure for requesting reasonable accommodations for an interview in Guidewire?
Yeah, we have an email that when someone applies, if you're shortlisted, you would flag it with the recruiter. So we have things on our job specs. We would have those conversations once you connect with a recruiter. And we would have a process in place depending on what the accommodation is needed or is required, depending on the individual experience. So, things like our coding assessments, we've had to make adjustments there, or sometimes in our interview process, we've had to make adjustments. We're still learning is what I would say. We're still learning, and that's what has brought us to have this relationship with Ahead and with WAM. We want to learn more. And I'm really curious as we go through this process with Ahead, what opportunities can come out on how we can build on that. I know as part of our partnership, we'll go through a needs assessment for the 2 roles that we're hiring for. But for us, we're very inclusive. It's all about making it a positive experience for all employees. So yeah, definitely open to learning as we go through that process.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think that is all we have in terms of questions. Thank you very much, Gary and Joanne. That was fantastic. Really, really great to get such brilliant insights and great resources as well for our graduates here today. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
I suppose at this point,